there was a memo that came out from Olive and Beech to every employee at Beech Aircraft. And the memo basically said, hey, there's this company called Raisbeck Engineering, and they're doing things to our great King Airs. And we just want each and every employee at Beech Aircraft to know you are prohibited from doing anything with this company. Then Beech Aircraft came to realize that, gosh, this stuff is selling a lot. There's a lot of people that are adding these products to their airplanes and making improvements. So pretty soon, the Beech service centers started selling the Raisbeck products in the aftermarket. They just finally, if you can't beat them, join them. James Raisbeck, the person that founded Raisbeck Engineering, came to Piedmont Aviation, where I was running aircraft sales at the time, and he gave a presentation about the products and ended up signing us up as a dealer. Piedmont Aviation was a large Beechcraft dealer at the time, selling new and used airplanes, and he signed us up to be a dealer, so we started selling the product. That was my first introduction. Sometimes I like to say, general aviation's all I know. Don't ask me about anything else. But I've been a pilot now for 56 years, starting when I was 16 years old in high school, and got into it because I thought it would impress the girls. We'll leave that aside. I became a licensed pilot in 1970 and later became a charter pilot and a flight instructor. When I was at the university in Oklahoma State, I made my beer money by flight instructing and flying charter. I went on to graduate school, got an MBA there, and I had quite accumulated a lot of time. I probably had maybe 3,000 hours by the time I finished college. And I decided it's time to go find a job. So I sent out a letter to Beechcraft, to Cessna, and to Piper Aircraft, all three of them. And initially, Cessna Aircraft snapped me up, and I was a training instructor there. My first job was teaching salesmen how to sell the Model 425 Corsair, later called the Conquest. But that was a turboprop, and I didn't even know anything about turboprops. So I had to do a real crash course. But it was very helpful for me. I wasn't at Cessna too long, and then Beech recruited me to come over to Beech Aircraft Corporation as a assistant regional manager, and I absolutely loved it. I was flying so much. I was going back and forth to the East Coast, calling on dealers, signing up new dealers, just flying the wings off of whatever airplane they would give me at the time. Actually, the wings did stay on, but anyway, I really enjoyed that. But after about 6 years doing that, one of the dealers called Piedmont Aviation, I mentioned them earlier, they recruited me, said, why don't you come out and get involved in sales? And I hesitated at first because I thought, I'm a manager, not a sales guy. But I got to thinking that would be the front lines, and maybe I could really learn something by getting on the front lines, because I had been working with the dealers, and this puts me on the front lines actually working with customers. So I made that move and ended up actually ultimately running sales, vice president sales, and then became actually part owner of that company. We actually bought that company from U.S. Airways, which had bought Piedmont. So I became part owner of the company. We grew it quite a bit. We became the largest Beech dealer in the nation for 8 years running. And I think that caught the attention of the folks at Beechcraft. And so they came back and recruited me to come as president of Beech. It was the biggest honor of my life, truthfully. It was like I got offered a job to be put in charge of the toy store. And I got to mess with all the toys, and it was such a great thing. And I got to tinker with the Bonanza, the Baron, all the King Airs. We really went through quite a litany of improvements and upgrades to all the C90 King Air series, the 200 series, the 350 series, and even military versions of those airplanes. It was a great opportunity. I'm very, very thankful for it. I've been an aircraft owner now for 30 years, I guess. I still own and fly, even though I'm getting to be a little bit of an old guy. I'm still actively flying. I have a Beech Bonanza A36, which I love. When I first started at Beech, I started in 1980, but right around 1982, it was a privilege because Olive Ann Beech, who was the chairman of the board, was still there. She ran a tight ship. I was in my office, and back in those days, we didn't have email. We got memos. And there was a memo that came out from Olive Ann Beech to every employee at Beech Aircraft. And the memo basically said, hey, there's this company called Raisbeck Engineering, and they're doing things to our great King Airs. And we just want each and every employee at Beech Aircraft to know you are prohibited from doing anything with this company. Okay, so I stayed away from Raisbeck Engineering back then. But then I think Beech Aircraft came to realize that, gosh, this stuff was selling a lot. There's a lot of people that are adding these products to their airplanes and making improvements. So pretty soon, the Beech service centers started selling the Raisbeck products in the aftermarket. And so that became a big channel for Raisbeck, in addition to some of the independent service centers that they had. But then there were certain shortcomings on the airplanes in production. I'll give you an example. On the 350 King Air, one of the things after that airplane was originally certified, there was something called the yaw damp inoperative service sealing. If the yaw damper fails, the aircraft was required then to go down as low as 5,000 feet for stability reasons. And Raisbeck demonstrated to the FAA that with the Raisbeck aft body strakes, the service ceiling could be raised from 5,000 to 18,000. So it really changed the airplane. It made it more longitudinally stable, but it really changed something. Just imagine if you're flying over around the Colorado area and you're supposed to go to 5,000 feet. Well, that's below the ground, so that didn't really work. That was just one example of a number of where the factory figured out that, gosh, we could probably start adding this stuff to production and further expand our market. As a salesman and a sales leader, and when I was at Piedmont, I said we sold a lot of new airplanes and used airplanes. And one of the first questions as a sales guy that I would get from customers is, oh, okay, you've got this 1984 B200 King Air for sale. What Raisbeck products does it have on it? And so it'd be one of the first questions that was asked. And I came to realize that customers really valued that. They were willing to pay more for that. And in our case, as a dealer, we got to usually move that inventory quicker if it had Raisbeck products on it. I would say as a sales guy and sales leader, that was a real key benefit. As a pilot, certainly I learned very quickly that what the products did in terms of just pure performance, it was very obvious that airplanes fully equipped with the Epic Platinum 200 series, which is loaded with all of the modifications, clearly was a faster airplane. But also you could notice very quickly that it was a more quiet airplane from the propellers. It was smoother. The passengers were in more comfort because the longitudinal stability with the aft body strakes is less wiggling in the back. And so as a pilot, I just came to appreciate that very quickly. And then, of course, with wing lockers, as a pilot, you can store a lot. You've got wing lockers on both sides. You can put a lot of the sort of the loose equipment that pilots have, like propeller restraints and intake plugs and things like that. Put that in one, and then baggage in the other for your passengers. Just helps to keep the clutter out of the airplane. As a pilot, I came to appreciate that very quickly. But I think lastly, I would say as a businessman, and when I was in charge at Beech, I'll give you a short story. There was one occasion where a customer from Tahiti, believe it or not, ordered a B200 with the Epic Platinum package to be put on in an aftermarket in a post-production environment. And our guy that took the order forgot to order the Raisbeck props. So the customer comes from Tahiti to pick up the airplane, and he discovers that it didn't have the Raisbeck props, and he was a little upset. I won't get into some of the language that was used, but he was a bit upset because he said, you need to understand, if I don't have the Raisbeck products on this airplane, I cannot operate in the airstrips that we use. I had to call up James Raisbeck very quickly, very humbly, and said, how quickly can you get me some of the Raisbeck power props, which is what we were installing at that time. And we had a good working relationship. I knew James very well. James was quite a businessman, quite a marketeer, and a great engineer. And when I was at Beech, he came knocking on my door a lot. And we became good friends. After I left Beech, once Beech was sold to Goldman Sachs and another company called Onyx. And I ended up leaving on great terms, left a lot of great friends there, went on my way. But James was the first guy to call me and say, you need to come help me with Raisbeck Engineering as a consultant. So I've been actually not all successive years. I took a little break in sort of retirement. I took a little break to work for Piper Aircraft, but on and off, I've been a consultant for Raisbeck since 2007. And just to be clear, that customer from Tahiti, they ordered the Epic Platinum. We just failed to deliver it. So we did, because we shorted them. That one key product was the propellers. But part of the Epic Platinum package is you get a flight manual supplement with it, with all of the performance, the takeoff improvements, the climb performance improvements, the runway capability improvements. So all of it does work in synchrony and to optimize the performance of the airplane. So it's, yes, every individual package has a benefit, but when you put them all together, it adds up more than just the individual contributions. They just finally, if you can't beat them, join them. Yeah, so that's really what happened. And today, Raisbeck is a supplier to the factory. We supply the aft body strakes on the 350 as production standard. We supply the wing lockers as production standard on the 350. We supply the ram air recovery system on the, I said 350, now it's 360. And we supply the ram air for the 260. And we also were on production on the C90. C90 is not currently in production. It's been paused. But we also provided the strakes and props for the C90 when it was actively being produced. So a lot of things going into production at the factory. Plus, Beechcraft has quite a bit of what we call special mission, which is government and military sales. And we do quite a bit of business because of what it produces for those customers. So they do those modifications in a post-production type environment quite often. The products are valued in the previously owned aircraft marketplace. But what we find in the aftermarket is quite often, if a customer does buy a used, pre-owned King Air, they like to make it their special airplane. And that time, right after they buy it, is maybe they want to put new paint on it. Maybe they want to, I'd like to get a little bit more performance, or I'd like to get this capability, and I've heard about Raisbeck Engineering. That's really a pretty prime time for us in selling and marketing those products. So right after somebody buys a previously owned airplane, or maybe they buy an airplane that has, say, strakes and props on it, but they want to go ahead and finish a whole Epic Platinum package and get the leading edges, get the ram air recovery, the whole thing, and maybe the high flow gear doors if the airplane has the larger high flow gear. Makes a big difference.